This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to episode 36 of A Geek Leader. This one's going to be more of a talk about reaction and overreacting to situations. And I want to talk about how to respond to a situation versus react. And one of the problems we have when we react to things, when we react to a situation, we are playing defense. So to follow the sports analogy, it's hard to score when you're on defense, right? If you're on a football team, occasionally you may get an interception or pick up a fumble and run it back for a touchdown, but defensive touchdowns and defensive scores are really rare. You score when you're on offense. And if you're always reacting to situations, then you're always on defense. And what you want to do is to think about that situation and come back and respond. And doing that will put you more in a comfortable state. It'll help you make better decisions. Whenever we react to situations, we're typically emotionally driven. We're sometimes haphazard. We're not really thinking things through thoroughly. Our stress level's up, we panic a little bit, and that leads to overreaction. And overreaction can cause all kinds of problems. So what we want to do is learn how to keep our stress level down during situations and respond instead of react. So whenever we overreact, it's a surefire way to lose trust of your team. We talked about trust last week and how to build trust with your team, and whenever you overreact, you're going to be losing some of that trust because they're going to think, well, this guy is not cool under pressure. He can't handle the situation that you're in. So in order to do that, you need to respond in a calm, clear manner versus overreacting. So whenever we do overreact and we're in a stressful situation, our cortisol level spikes. And if you remember when I talked about the biology of leadership, cortisol is that stress chemical. And it makes your senses a little bit heightened. You focus down on the problem. But one of the things being in tech and whether you're in development or anything, you're trying to solve a problem. You're coming up with solutions. And whenever there's a crisis, you have to sometimes think outside the box. And when your mind is focused and you're narrowed down on the problem, you can't see the solution that's sitting right there in the margins or right there outside of your frame of reference. So it's not really good to react in those kind of situations. It's better to step back and respond correctly. So whenever we overreact, and that cortisol level gets high, our body starts to shut down certain areas, which makes it unhealthy to be in a stressful state. Cortisol is great whenever there's a problem that's risking your life and you need to focus and get out of there, but it's not so great on a daily basis while you're at work and you're being stressed out. So and when we're in this state, we tend to make bad decisions. Whenever you're emotionally driven or emotionally charged in a situation, the words that come out of your mouth aren't always the best words. They're not always the best thing that you can say. So we want to be careful about that whenever we're in those kind of stressful situations. So I wanted to go through a couple of ways, reasons why we get stressed out at work that may lead to this overreaction. Number one, the unexpected happens. So whenever you're going along and everything goes as you expect it, the stress level is low. We know what's coming up. We're comfortable with that. But every now and then, and a lot of jobs, especially in technology, more often than not, things don't go as you plan. Something deviates, something didn't work right, some upgrade broke something that you weren't expecting, something wasn't tested thoroughly, whatever it is, the unexpected happens. And when that happens, that causes us to panic or get stressed or understand that situations aren't as we picture them to be, therefore something's wrong. So another thing that can cause us to get stressed out at work is fear. We're all afraid of some things, and I've done a couple episodes already about fear and bravery and anxiety and how to battle those. But whenever we run into situations that do cause fear, we stress out. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the cortisol level going up is because we're afraid. And many times when things don't go as we expect them to, in the first scenario, we do become afraid. We also get afraid when we're doing something big, something important. Even if things are going as expected, sometimes giving a talk makes you afraid. Sometimes being in a meeting and being asked to talk about a situation or answer people may make you a little bit afraid. So we have to get over those fears in one way or another. One of the best ways that I found to get over fears is to get comfortable in those situations and to practice it. I used to be terrified of talking in public, believe it or not, but then the more I did it, better I got at it, and the more I liked it, and now I really enjoy speaking. So you just get over those fears over time, and I really recommend you going back and checking out the 2 episodes I did on fear, anxiety, and being brave. All right, another thing that can get us stressed out at work is when we're overwhelmed. And many times, in being a boss, I'm very guilty of this, we will give too much to our team, or too much will come upon us, and we get overwhelmed. And there's a lot of things you can do to get past this being overwhelmed, and I'll talk about that in ways to stay calm, but one of the things you can do is to delegate some of that stuff and set boundaries and things like that. But that happens when we get overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed, we get stressed because we feel like there's more to do than we have time to do it. But let me give you a little tip. That's always going to be the case. Whether it's in tech, whether it's at your house, whether it's with your family and your kids, there's always more to do than you have time to do. If you're like me, we do a lot of DIY projects at our house, and there's always something else that we could be doing. I could be pressure washing the windows upstairs and the siding. I could be staining a deck. There's more work that I could be doing, but I run out of time. I don't have time for that. If you have kids, there's more things you can be doing with your kids. You could be throwing the ball outside. You could be taking your kids for a jog. You could be hiking in the woods and camping, fishing. There's lots of stuff you can do with your kids, and you run out of time. You can't do it all. So you may feel overwhelmed. Just realize that everybody's in that situation, and it's always going to be that way, and it's okay that it's that way. All right, another thing that can get us stressed out at work is competition. I try not to ever put people against each other and to compete with each other, but it happens. And my last job, there was lots of competition in different areas, and a lot of it was not, it wasn't intentional. People didn't try to put competition, but there was always a sense of, well, that release your team did. How many defects did it have? How many bugs did it have? Oh, well, we're doing releases every Tuesday. Oh, yeah, we're doing it Tuesday and Thursday. There's always this little bit of competition. And you feel stressed because you feel like you need to compete with your peers, because we do get compared and contrasted with those around us. And we feel like if we're not holding our weight or we're not competing at the highest level with those peers, then we're inferior. And, sometimes competition is a good thing. It can inspire innovation and change and lots of good things, but it can also lead to stress. So be aware that competition can be one of those things that cause stress. And lastly, I want to talk about what happens outside of work sometimes comes to work. People say you should separate work and home. And I do agree. There should be a time and place for everything. And I try not to talk about work too much with my wife at home, and just because I think that needs to be separated. I need a break from it personally. But it's impossible to completely separate work and home. I mean, you are who you are. You're you. And whether you're at home or whether you're at work or whether you're, on vacation, you're still you. And you carry your life and everything that comes along with your life everywhere you go. And that doesn't mean that you need to bring drama into work from home, and it doesn't mean that you should take drama at work home. What it means is that sometimes you're influenced by the feelings and the situations that you're having outside of work when you're at work, and vice versa. And remember that those around you are going through that too. So whenever someone else seems stressed, understand that they may be going through something that you're not aware of outside of work that's affecting them, and that's okay. So just try to have that empathy and think about that. So next I want to talk about 10 ways to stay calm at work. Number 1 is understanding the big picture. I have this saying that I always give my team whenever something seems to be going wrong or something seems to be really stressful. I always tell people that, hey, just remember, no one's going to die. Where we work, no one's going to die because of the mistakes that we make. No one's going to die because of, a problem being late. Now, we always want to hit our deadlines. We always want to deliver the best applications, the best software, the best code, the best tools, the best systems, the best support, the best service that we can. But if we mess up and we don't deliver the best and the best isn't there, no one's going to die. We're not a surgeon. We're not NASA or the Air Force or the military. No one's going to die. So just keep that in your mind and understand the big picture. Understand things that are important to you that seem like a big deal to you may not be a big deal in the grand scheme of things, the grand scheme of your business or your department. Let me tell you a little story about my son. I have a 4-year-old son, and he will occasionally get upset about things that to me seem very minor. And one example was he was trying to put a straw into his juice box and the straw broke. And we've all seen that happen before, where it kind of bends and it doesn't quite go in. And he flipped out. He got all upset and couldn't get this straw in the juice box. And to him, that was the biggest problem around. That was the biggest problem in the world right now, was I couldn't get this straw in this juice box. For me, that's like a simple thing. And even if the straw's broke, go get another one. Go get another juice box. I mean, we've got several in there. It's not a big deal. Don't get upset about it. Don't throw the juice box. But for him, that was the biggest thing because of different perspectives. So if he could see things from my perspective, he would realize that's not a big deal. But from his perspective, that is the most important thing going on right now, and I need to fix it. So understand that there's different perspectives, and your issue may not be the biggest issue. Try to understand the big picture. All right. Number 2, remember, good enough can be just that, good enough. All right. We should always strive for perfection, but we don't need perfection. Perfection is a mirage. It's an unattainable destination that we can't get to. And we should always strive for it, but don't get upset when you don't achieve it. No one's perfect. You're not either. It's not going to happen. You're not always going to be perfect. You're not going to deliver perfect software, perfect hardware, perfect support all the time. Don't always sit and think, what can I do better? What did I do wrong? I mean, that's good to reflect on from time to time, but don't stress over it. There's a difference between reflection and stressing. It's good to ask those questions. What can you do better? How can you improve? But don't get upset about your performance going into those questions. One of the things I like to think about is just take a minute and think about the good, not just the bad. Think about how good it is now, how good that you achieved, how good you did to get to where you're at. And that kind of reduces the stress and makes you feel a little bit better. All right, number 3, remember the Pareto principle. Tim Ferriss talked about this a lot in the 4-hour work week, but it's the 80-20 rule. It's the idea that some people use it to say 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. You can also say 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. There's lots of different ways to do this, but Pareto actually discovered this with his pea pods. At least that's the way the story goes, that he was in gardening and he noticed that 80% of the peas were produced by 20% of the pea pods. And that's kind of where he came up with this 80-20 rule. But I like to think about it in projects. I like to think about whenever I get stressed out and I feel like I'm not making progress, I remember that 80% of the progress can usually be achieved by 20% of the task. So when I get to that point where I'm not achieving as much as I did before, I'm not quite finishing as far, I'm not moving at as rapid pace as I was, I think back, well, did I achieve 80% of it? Because now I've got a lot more smaller tasks, and that comes with overhead, that comes with extra work. And it can help me, stay motivated and realize that it's just part of this principle that I'm going through. All right, number 4, focus on the fix. A lot of times we talk about the bad things. We talk about all the problems that we have. And you can also, some people talk about this as they say, think good thoughts. I like to say focus on the fix. Don't focus on the problems. Don't focus on the things that aren't working at the moment. Focus on what you have to do to get those things working. Focus on the solutions. As humans, we're hardwired to solve problems. That's just what we do. We work together, we solve problems. We try to fix things. And we've even developed games that are designed to reduce stress by us solving problems. Sudoku is one of them, puzzles. And we don't worry about all the puzzle pieces. We don't worry about the chaos that's within those puzzle pieces when we're putting together a jigsaw puzzle to relax. What we're worried about is with the picture on that box. We're focusing on the solution, and that brings comfort to us. It brings peace. It actually is a stress reducer, not a stress creator. So when you're at work and you're trying to fix something, you're trying to solve a problem, think of it as a puzzle. And we're not worried about all the things that don't work. You don't look at the puzzle and think about, well, this piece doesn't fit here. We won't stress about this piece not fitting here. We're looking at the solution. We're looking at, where does this piece actually fit? Let's look at the picture. Let's look at the box. Let's figure this out. And it makes us feel good to solve the problem. And we should take that same enthusiasm, that same gift, and that same, thing to our work. All right, number 5 is document your progress. One of the things that I like to do whenever I'm feeling like I'm not achieving as much is to look back. And every year I do this. It's very simple at work. I just create a simple Word document. And right now I've got one that's called 2018 Successes. Whenever our team does something good or something that is above mediocre, I put it in that Word document. So whenever, it does a couple of things. One, whenever I feel like we're not making progress, I can go back and open that and say, oh, wow, I forgot we did this and this and this. Because a lot of times once you've done something, you forget that you've achieved that. You forget about the good things. So if you document your progress, you can go back and look at that stuff and see all the things that you've done. And I actually have different teams and the different groups. We have Trello boards, and we'll put those things in our Trello board. And I can go back and look at that and say, oh, wow, we've done these things. So it's really a positive way to go back and look. And the second thing that does is at the end of the year, when my boss wants me to write up something about our achievements for the year, I have a very good start. I have a list of things that we've achieved, and I can just write a little paragraph or a couple of sentences about each one of them and get that document knocked out, no problem. All right, number 6, set boundaries and deadlines. Learn to say no. Seriously, learn to say no. Try it. Practice it. Say no to different things. And set deadlines for yourself. I'll explain how those two are related in just a second, but let me tell you a story about when I said no. After the birth of my second kid, at the time I was working late most days and then more than I should, and I would come home and open up the laptop and stay on the laptop later. And after my second kid was born, I went to my boss and I said, look, I'm not going to stay late anymore. I'm going to go home, and I'm not going to answer my phone or check email from the time I leave the office until my kids go to bed around 8:30. And that's the boundary that I'm setting. And when I first said that, my boss was just very, it's like, I'm a little nervous. I don't know if that's going to work out. We can try it out for a period of time. And that's what I said. So, okay, we'll try it out for a couple of weeks. And if it becomes a problem, then we'll come up with a solution. And I was there for another 2 years or so, and it wasn't a problem. And now I left and I came to this new position. And when I was interviewing, I mentioned this is one part of my philosophy, is one of the things that I do, and it wasn't a problem, and it hasn't been a problem. And that's because I set the boundaries. And one of the things I found is that the people around me at work weren't upset that I set these boundaries. They actually respected me more because I set these boundaries and I stuck to them. Because I stood up for the things that mattered to me more than work. And I think that was an important thing to do. And it also gave me peace, because it gave me a time that I knew when I left there until 8:30, no problem at work is going to matter. It's not going to matter to me what's going on at work. Now, I couldn't always shut it off because it carries with you, but it was definitely significantly better as far as the reduction of stress. All right, number 7, let's take it one step at a time. Break down your problems. Just like Scrum, you want to break down those stories as small as possible, thinking smaller and smaller chunks. And one example would be if you go to ageekleader.com and look at these show notes for episode 36, you'll see that I actually broke this down into different sections. I have one section called 10 ways to stay calm, which is what I'm going through now. And when I created this, I created all the section headers, and then I listed out the 10 things in this. And as I went through it, every time I finished one, I saved the draft. And I realized that, I finished this, I finished that. And by breaking it out into small steps, I could see with the finish line. I knew how close I was to being done, and I could track my progress much easier. And not only that, it made me feel good as I achieved each one of those little tasks. If I just had one big task of doing this, of writing out these show notes, it would be much more challenging than if I had a bunch of small tasks and I could knock them off, because I wouldn't know when I was ending. I wouldn't even know when to stop. But now, since I gave it 10 ways to stay calm, once I hit the 10th thing, I know I'm done and I can move on. And it really makes me feel more comfortable about doing this. It also helps me get things down. All right, number 8, trust yourself. Trust yourself. You are where you're at for a reason. You were hired for a reason. You bring value. You understand things. You have experience. You have knowledge. And remember that. Whatever it is, your education, your experiences, your instincts, the things that you've experienced that no one else has, makes you uniquely qualified to do what you're doing right now and what you're going to do. So whenever problems happen that do stress you, I know for me, a lot of times I fall into that imposter syndrome. And I have to think back about my track record. I have to realize that, yeah, I am pretty good at technology. Yeah, I am pretty good at troubleshooting issues. I am pretty good at figuring out solutions to problems. And when I say those things to myself, and when I think about that, it helps me get past this imposter syndrome. And if you have more about that, check out episode 7 where I talked about getting over the imposter syndrome and dealing with that. I think that'll help you out as you move through this. But trust yourself. It'll definitely reduce your stress when you have confidence in yourself, and those around you would have confidence in you when you have confidence in yourself. All right, number 9, delegate. You don't have to be a boss to delegate. And that's just a myth that some people think. They think you have to be a boss, you know, but you can ask people to help you out. And as humans, we are hardwired to help each other. We have a desire inside of us that says we want to help others around us. That's just part of our species. That's why we've made it so far. So ask for help. And if you're the boss, you can delegate your task. And you don't really have to ask. You can actually tell people, but you don't want to do that. You really want to ask and trust those around you that they'll do a good job. They may surprise you. They may do things different than you, but it may be just as good or if not better. And once you delegate, those things come off your plate, less stress, you feel better. And last but not least is to breathe. When you're stressed out, just take deep breaths. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, take a deep breath. Whenever you feel like you can't go any further, just take a deep breath. There is actually power in deep breaths. I met a guy named Jonathan Wynn a few years ago at TEDx Charlotte, and he gave a talk about the power of a simple breath. It's a really good talk. I put the video in the show notes at ageekleader.com, so go check that out and watch the talk. It's a really good talk, but it just shows you how taking a deep breath can calm you down. It can it can do a lot to you, and it's just to help you out. It's a really good talk. So I hope you've enjoyed these 10 things you can do to reduce stress at work and to prevent you from overreacting, to respond in a calm and collective way versus overreacting to situations. And if you have enjoyed this, please go to iTunes, subscribe, give me a review and a rating. Reviews are most helpful, even if it's just one sentence or a couple of words that you've enjoyed this. I really enjoy getting them. I've read a couple of them that are, people have talked about how the podcast has really helped them out and helped them in their career. So if any of the stories relate to you, please go to iTunes and just type a couple of words, and you can do it on your phone and submit that for me. That would be greatly appreciated. I like to read them, and it helps spread the word. And head on over to A Geek Leader and sign up for the newsletter so you can subscribe and check out the Technical Leadership Survey. Still looking for people to fill out the survey. I've gotten several responses so far, some good ones, but it will help me craft more content that's more about the things that may help you guys out. That's what I'm looking for is better content so I can provide this with you. Stay tuned because we're going to have some more interviews coming up. Like the last one, I hope you guys enjoyed that one, and I'll talk to you guys later.